All right, I'm now being joined on the program by Dr. Kudo Eresia Eke, who is the General Manager, External Relations, Nigeria LNG. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let me start by asking you why Nigeria LNG is so vehemently opposed to the amendment of the NLNG Act.
It's because of the national interest. It's because of the huge consequences that would befall us as a nation if we go ahead with this amendment. Apparently, it would appear that many people do not understand the extent to which they would be affected, at least at the national and even at the local level. One of the things that are going to happen is that Nigeria's reputation as a country where foreign investment can go to will be in tatters. The reason why that is so is that this is your biggest project, this is your biggest success. This is a project that took you 30 years to put in place, you know, and then you wrote in guarantees, assurances, and which were further reassured by various top government officials. You have a law, you have a contract that is actually a law, and then there are also provisions within that act about how, if you want to make amendments, it can be done. So you unilaterally set aside the guarantees, you set aside the assurances, you set aside the contract.
Well, those assurances, we have been told, for instance, by the protagonists of this amendment, Honorable Liogo, that those assurances are still intact, that about 22 of those assurances are still intact, and that so far, your organization has not been able to prove that any of those assurances will be affected by this amendment.
Well, I don't think, I speak a bit of Yoruba since I'm here in Lagos. Let me just show you this is the bill as amended. Now, what it says is that it's inserting section 7A.
Exactly.
It was not there before, okay? So it now has section 7A and 7B, okay? It also says that to do this, it has to delete paragraphs in Schedule 2. This is their own document. This is not Nigeria LNG document. This is from the National Assembly. This was what was passed. Schedule 2, to remove paragraph 1 of the guarantees, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and paragraph 6. Is it that when they do something in the National Assembly, they are not paying attention? This is their own paper. This is the one that was passed by the House of Rep. So are we?
So how does the removal now really affect?
Yeah. So the question to ask is, what do the guarantees say? The guarantees say that we would not amend the act. That's what the guarantees are. Because there was complete prevarication for decades to say, these people, can we trust them? Can we trust them?
And we're talking about, they have also argued that, you know, some of these guarantees you're talking about were actually, should I say, were actually in place. They came into place during the military era.
It doesn't matter military or civilian. This is an act of parliament. Except people who are being bamboozled. 90% of the laws we are using today as acts of parliament were actually passed as decrees. So we're just trying to bamboozle people. Nigerians should not be, let's let nobody pull wool over your head, over your eyes. Essentially, what's going to happen once you renege on promises that you have made, you have basically sworn to, and assured and reassured over time, nobody's going to trust you. It happens in everyday business. Nobody will trust you. And if nobody trusts you, nobody will bring investment into your country. Yeah. And I need you to understand that there's so many countries in the world looking for these investments. Why should people want to go to where promises are broken? And immediate impact of those promises, let me just get to you. Immediate impact is that the $25 billion, which we're expecting in a few years' time for the Train 7, are coming from these same investors with whom you have broken confidence. And of course, those ones will not come. The same thing, the similar kinds of investors are going to be bringing in for brass LNG. So you might as well kiss those goodbye. You know, if you remember, this was how we were talking about it during the Virgin Nigeria discussion. When people are talking about agreements, and you know, people try to bluff their way.
Let me just read out something. Let me read out something, Honorable Liogo, the member now who is pushing for this amendment, and of course we're still waiting for the Senate to take a final decision on it. But let me just read out one of the things he said, and let me get your reaction to it. He says, it's important we acknowledge one fact, that in Section 2 of the NLNG Act, the law gives NLNG what we call tax relief period, and these fiscal incentives are very clear in terms of their duration. They are purely for a period of 10 years. NLNG, like I have stated, has enjoyed these incentives for almost 18 years without paying levies, because the law says the incentives commenced on the commencement of first operation. We all know that the first train came into operation in September 1999 when the Bonny plant started production and sent its first shipment in October. Automatically, those fiscal incentives have expired because they have actually enjoyed their status for 18 years. So now that these incentives have expired, we're saying pay your entitlements in line with provisions of the NDDC Act. So basically saying these incentives that you were talking about actually had a lifespan, 10 years.
I'm not talking about incentives. I'm not talking about incentives. He's just deliberately trying to pull things over your eyes. I'm not talking about incentives. Incentives had long expired. Why did we pay taxes? Why have we paid up to $5.5 billion in taxes? Is it because they were not expired? It's because they had long expired. That's why we're the biggest tax-paying organization in Nigeria and probably in Africa. So how did that happen? Don't be fooled. We're talking about guarantees and assurances. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the agreements that we entered into as a nation. We're talking about the consequences that will befall this nation in terms of our outlook in the world, in drawing in finances and investment. The whole question of ease of doing business that the government today is very busy with is in order to ameliorate this condition so we can bring in foreign capital and create jobs here. But it's not going to happen with this kind of attitude where we do not honor agreements.
Yeah, you keep
18,000 jobs are at stake with Train 7. They're not going to happen. We're throwing them away because of this amendment.
Now, can I just ask you a follow-up question to that? I mean, these investments, because we know that Nigeria LNG is not solely owned by the Nigerian government. Of course, there are partners. I mean, you know, but what we understand is that the Nigerian government owns 49% stake of that company. So, for instance, this member, let me read out something he also said. And his point is that, you know, you're making a case for people you should not be making a case for. Because what he is trying to say is that this is a company that is owned by government. Let me just read out so I get your reaction. He said, the federal government has 49% stake in this venture, but it is not the federal government that is saying no, don't pay. It is those with 10%, 15% that have come together to form the management team of the company that are now ganging up against the amendment.
Let me tell you this, yeah? Have you listened to the Minister of Petroleum speak about this? He is very strong on the fact that Nigeria, because he knows the business and he's a lawyer, that Nigeria should not renege on his agreement. Have you listened to the GMD of NNPC speak about this? You've listened to Leo Ogo. That's what you have done. You have not listened to GMD. You have not listened to the minister. You have not listened to the Attorney General of the Federation. You have not listened to the Minister of Trade and Investment. Which government is he talking about? This is all something happening within the House of Rep in the House Committee of Gas and then passing it in the House of Rep. That's what's happening. Indeed, what the law says, government is the one that entered into agreement. And let me also tell you that these agreements are further backed by bilateral treaties between countries. Nobody's talking about those. So, all the statement we've heard from the executive is very positive. They understand the implications, but only the legislature. So, government needs to at least reconcile its position. At least the legislature should allow the executive, who are experts, to let them know the implications of
but
this.
why would it be difficult for NLNG to actually commit 3% of its annual budget to...
Are you listening to me? The issue is not money. The issue is law. The issue is promise. It's agreements. That's what the issue is. If you break your agreement that you're not going to do A and you do it, then basically nobody trusts you. That's the issue. Now, let me address 3% money. Yeah? This is what is 3%? If you look at how much we have sunk into Niger Delta, let me even take the recent one. Recently, we voted 60 billion naira to do a road, federal government road, which no one asked us to. But because it's in the heart of the Niger Delta, we went ahead and volunteered.
So that is so people don't get the impression that the NLNG is doing nothing.
No, so it's not the issue. Money is not the issue. The issue is that business cannot be done outside of the confines of agreements. If you are now running businesses or hoping to attract businesses, and yet you have no respect for the rule of law, it's a pipe dream.
Is it that you're scared that after this amendment, if you do not fight this, that we could have subsequent amendments in the future? Is that the reason you're doing this?
Not at all. Not at all. It is that we would have made ourselves liars as a country. Because we gave our promise based upon which people made their investment, and even within that act, because the contract, people didn't believe us, and that's why the contract is a law. Now, upon those laws, we have also written as government to say we would not renege on our promises. This is breaking that. So we are becoming promise breakers.
I want you to tell us, because earlier you had said, this has the potential to scuttle that 25 billion investment. Tell us how this could happen.
Of course.
How can it happen?
Imagine that you are the one that has invested. Imagine you are the external party. Maybe let me bring it home. You're an external party that invested in Nigeria LNG along with the Nigerian government, and then you reach certain agreements and a framework within which you operate. Okay? And you then, as part of the government, then unilaterally rubbishes the agreement. Are you going to have the confidence to bring in more money to invest?
Are those partners actually raising concerns about this amendment? Are they coming to you and saying, look, this is not right, you shouldn't do it? Are they raising serious concerns?
Who is Nigeria LNG? Nigeria LNG is owned by these partners. And I've told you that we have heard from government. When I say government, executive arm of government.
That's also a stakeholder.
Their position is clear.
NLNG.
Because they understand the implications. Can they at least talk to the people who know the business? These are the people who invested. It's the government. And this government is telling you, don't do it. You think that you know better than them? You think that you're more patriotic than them? I think Nigerians should shine their eyes, as I say. Be clear about what is going on here. You have a situation where those of us in Nigeria NG are saying, this is wrong, don't do it. Those who are in government who signed on behalf of the country are saying, this is wrong, don't do it. And people are still waxing strong and lyrical. What is going to happen is that the position in which we are now, as economically, will get worse. Because we don't have the money to invest as a country. So we need confidence of investors to bring in their money, for us to invest, create wealth, create jobs. What we're doing is that we're basically making them lose confidence in our nation. And don't forget, you're doing this to your number one, Nigeria's most successful, the best of the success, as it was described by the Minister of Information. The success of successes, as was described by certain ministers also. That is what you're harming. And this is not because this organization is not doing, we are the flagship as far as CSR is concerned in the Niger Delta and beyond. And most people who follow CSR know how much work we're doing, and we're ready to do more. We show the way. We put out 3 billion, for instance, every year for the next 25 years to help to develop our host community. And
that's why some people are saying, if you do all of this, so why would
it's about law. It's about promise. It's about the sanctity of your word. It's about Nigeria. It's about the credibility of our nation. That's what it is. So tomorrow, when our president goes out, reaches agreements with other countries, we want people to respect him and to respect the law and to know that whatever he says will be kept, especially if it's now been enshrined into a law. Is it that our words don't mean anything? Our laws don't mean anything? Is that the message you want to send to the world? This is where the pain is.
And tell us about the 18,000 jobs that you talked about earlier.
The 18,000 jobs
that we stand to lose.
For construction of Train 7, we're going to have 18,000 jobs created. And that will be in the heart of the Niger Delta. I need you to think about the implications of that for peace, for getting the young ones employed and engaged. 18,000 jobs.
And you're basically saying,
of course,
if this amendment eventually sails through,
of course,
everything could just go down.
It just goes down. Because I've proven to you that as an investor, once your confidence is shattered, you're not likely, especially where you have other opportunities, to devote the capital to the same place that has shattered your confidence. And that's the risk. Because it's not going to just affect this particular league of investors, it will affect all investors.
Because the argument of these lawmakers, especially Liogo and the other lawmakers of the Niger Delta who are pushing this, I mean, they say, look, whether you like it or not, you're also contributing sort of to the degradation happening in that environment, gas flaring and all of that.
I'm glad you say that.
And that if you do that, then
I'm glad you say that.
It takes nothing away from you if the people are asking you, look, for what you're doing to our environment, can you put aside this?
I'm glad you say that. I mean, to be very polite, that is misleading. Absolutely misleading. If there is one organization that has been responsible for cleaning up the degradation in our country as far as oil and gas is concerned, that company is Nigerian LNG. I know how it does it. It does it by buying up the potential gas which would have been flared, which is the reason experts will tell you that as at the time Nigerian LNG came in to being, Nigeria was one of the, if it was the worst, easily the worst gas flaring nation.
And there's also the
let me land. Let me just a moment. This is a very important point. You know, easily the worst gas flaring nation. 65% was our flaring rate. Now, when we started buying those flares, essentially, it's gone down now to less than 20%. And our belief was that with Train 7, we'll be able to do more and bring it down to single digit. And maybe by the grace of God, with Brass LNG, we'll probably bring it down to 0. So what you are being told is the very opposite of what is happening. So you must begin to question what is really going on. If someone is telling you something that's absolutely misleading. And I also need you to understand something that is very misleading. They're talking about levies. Let me tell you, I come to buy from you, which is what is happening from Nigeria LNG. We buy the gas. We buy the gas. And you, from whom I buy the gas, already pay 3% of this same levy that we're talking about. So, of course, you factor that into the gas that you sell to me. So I buy it from you, okay? And then I process it, make it liquid, and then you come again to me to pay another.
Yeah, because you do the same processing in their environment, and that's what they're saying.
Listen,
that your operation is in the environment, so it really doesn't matter where you're buying it.
Listen, there is no operation. It's a cooling system. So you buy the gas, you put it in a big fridge, you cool it, and then you sell. That's what happens. Basically, the devastation or the degradation that we're speaking about usually happens when people are producing. So you have a spill there, you have a flare there. So
you don't produce?
None of that. We are the cleaning agent. If anyone was going to sanction Nigeria because of overflaring, he's going to spare us because now we have Nigeria LNG. It's like you have malaria and you need a doctor. The doctor comes to cure you, and then the doctor is being penalized. This is a situation where people are pulling wools over our eyes. Nigeria, let us open our eyes.
But this is really funny. The irony of it all is that this is Nigeria against Nigeria. You're a Nigerian,
which is what makes it sad.
It's an arm of the government of Nigeria that's actually pushing for this.
But if you don't want to listen to me, at least listen to the experts of Nigeria. Listen to the ministers that are responsible. Listen to those who are in petroleum. Listen to them. Listen to those who know about this act and the law. Listen to them. If you don't want to listen to me or listen to Nigeria LNG, this is not good for our country. At the end of the day, it may look like a simple thing, but I can tell you the impact from this is going to affect us as a country, all of us, and it's going to affect our children.
When is Train 7 supposed to take off? I mean,
Train 7 was in abeyance over a while, okay? Now, with the current administration, of President Muhammadu Buhari, there is new impetus injected into it. So we have reinvigorated all those processes that were sleeping. So the expectation is within a couple of years, there'll be FID, and then after the FID, there's the building of the train. Because indeed what the president told us when we visited him was that, listen, I'm very happy that you guys have 6 trains, but I can tell you as a former minister of petroleum and who worked on many of these plants, my expectation is that by now, you should have been on trains 12. Okay? So that gives you an idea of the level of momentum that this current administration is expecting. But rather than push and support us to move forward, what we're beginning to witness is cutting limbs in such a way that we may be, even our ability to maintain the current operation will be difficult. You know why? Because we need further investment to ensure that we have enough gas to fill our capacity as 6 trains to be able to make money.
And let's get one thing straight here. It's not as if Nigeria LNG doesn't pay tax. You pay tax. So basically, what the bone of contention here is that you're being asked to pay a separate kind of levy now to the NDDC. That is actually the bone of contention.
That's not the bone of contention. You need to understand it. The bone of contention is that we're breaking promises. That's the bone of contention. Money is not the issue. Honor is the issue. Business honor is the issue. Because we're already spending much more in the Niger Delta, much more than 3%. That's not the issue. The issue is that you're breaking your word as a nation.
Well, this bill, of course, goes to the Senate. It's still not a law yet anyway. The amendment is still not a law yet. You still need the concurrence of the Senate. Are you in touch with the Senate? Are you making your case forcefully there to, so that the amendment doesn't become law?
We're making contact with the Senate. We're speaking with them. We're discussing with them. Yeah, we are optimistic that many of them are business people, at least have some business orientation for the most part, and they will understand what sanctity of laws are. There are a few things investors look out for. One of them is the framework, the fiscal regime within which they will invest, which is the reason PIB, as we used to know it then, was so important, or is so important. Because people have to know on what platform they're investing. That is the fiscal framework. Now, if we're now beginning to change it midway, who's going to bring the money? The reason why some of us are speaking so passionately is because of Nigeria. Because we can see it at close quarters. We can also see how little things can cause great damage. And that's what this is about. And that's why I urge you, don't believe me, but please believe the ministers. Believe the GMD. Believe the experts in the industry. Believe Pengasan. These are authorities in the field. But instead you're hearing voices from the House of Representatives.
Well, they have a right to their own voice.
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
But we need to subject those voices because we're all Nigerians. We own this country together. No one owns it much more than the other. We have equal rights in this country, irrespective of what portfolio anybody may hold at this time. And we cannot see people want to destroy our nation. And
let's face it, I mean, this amendment sailed through with, the support of other members of the House of Representatives. So it's not as if this was pushed by
how many people are there in Nigeria? Yeah? We are over 160 million.
Well, you have the lawmakers representing these over 160 million people.
And if they don't listen, if they don't obey their own law, don't forget this is their own law. We're saying obey your own law. What is so wrong in obeying your own law?
So what appeal would you be making to the Senate?
To the Senate? The appeal we're making to the Senate is consider Nigeria. Consider the impact this will have on our dear country. Look closely. Don't let anyone pull wool over your eye. Read it for yourself. Read the guarantees. And see whether it is good for us as a nation to put pen to paper with other countries, have agreements, and then renege on those agreements. And not even follow our own law.
But some of those agreements, will they be forever?
That's what I'm saying. The Act itself provides, it already anticipates that it will not be forever. And he's saying the good faith that we have demonstrated together as shareholders in bringing out our money to invest. If there's need for a change, call us. We need to look at it again. And if there's a change, we make it and then we sign off.
So there's no duration like this member said, 10-year duration where, you're exempted.
The ones that are time-bound are falling off, like tax, holiday, and so all those ones have fallen off, and we're paying those ones. And that's why we're bringing in those huge sums. And I want you to know, really, if I have to give you a few figures, just to give you an idea of the capacity of this company to do good. It's a company that Nigeria invested 2.5 billion into. Yeah? And I want you to know that this is Nigeria's number one, run 100% by Nigerians. This is our beacon of hope. This is an example that we can do it. We can make it happen. We pull down so many good things in our country. Let's not pull this one down. And that's basically the message. Don't pull this one down. If it's about money, if it's about development, don't worry about development. We're in development with you, but respect international agreements.
Well, let's just hope you all find a common ground.
Not you are involved.
Of course, I mean
you are involved.
Of course, I am as a Nigerian.
Listening to me as a Nigerian,
yeah.
Don't sit back. This is about us. It's about our children. It's about our country. It's about our integrity as a nation in the business world.
Dr. Kudo, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.